Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The death toll in Burma, also known as Myanmar, from Friday's 7.7 magnitude earthquake has topped 2,000. It's expected to rise significantly as rescuers try to reach people buried under the rubble. At least 19 people also died in Thailand. The World Health Organization is warning healthcare facilities in Burma are overwhelmed as aid and humanitarian groups express alarm over the devastation.
People are just, desperate, devastated, and when I see the damage at the bridges and the roads, it was so huge. I have never seen anything like that in my life before. We were so astonished when we see the situation in Mandalay. Everything is like gone, and people are still trapped, and the casualties and everything is still counting.
The New York Times reports President Trump's dismantling of USAID has hampered the U.S. response to the earthquake in Burma, while China, Russia, and India quickly sent emergency teams. A three-person team from the U.S. is not expected to arrive until Wednesday. On Friday, some workers at USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance received layoff emails while they were preparing to respond to the earthquake. Burma is one of Asia's poorest nations, has been ruled by a military junta since a coup in 2021. Over the weekend, rebel groups accused the junta of carrying out airstrikes following the earthquake. Israeli forces are continuing to attack Gaza as Palestinians observe the second day of Eid al-Fitr to mark the end of Ramadan. On Sunday, Israeli attacks killed at least 64 Palestinians. Dozens of more Palestinians have been killed today, including many children. This comes as the United Nations is warning Gaza may run out of flour for bread within a week as Israel continues its total blockade of aid. Meanwhile, the Palestine Red Crescent Society has recovered the bodies of 15 emergency workers, including 8 medics with the Red Crescent, who were killed when Israeli forces opened fire on their vehicles near Rafah last week. It was the single deadliest attack on Red Cross or Red Crescent workers in the world since 2017. Jonathan Woodhull, a top UN official in Gaza, spoke at the site of the mass grave.
Health workers should never be a target, and yet we're here today digging up a mass grave of first responders and paramedics. 7 days ago, civil defense and PRCS ambulances arrived at the scene. One by one, they were hit, they were struck, their bodies were gathered and buried in this mass grave. We're digging them out in their uniforms, with their gloves on. They were here to save lives. Instead, they ended up in a mass grave. Their vehicles, their ambulances, UN vehicles, civil defense vehicles are crushed and dumped, covered in sand next to us. It's an absolute horror. What has happened here?
In news from the occupied West Bank, Israeli settlers and soldiers have repeatedly attacked Palestinians living in the village of Jinba and Masafer Yatta. On Friday, a settler mob attacked the village and injured 6 Palestinians, including a 64-year-old man who suffered a skull fracture. Hours later, Israeli forces raided the village and handcuffed and blindfolded all the Palestinian men in the village. At least 22 Palestinians were detained. The Associated Press ran an article about what happened with the headline, Israeli settlers seen on camera assaulting a Palestinian village. Police arrest only Palestinians, the headline read. The attacks come a week after settlers brutally beat the Palestinian filmmaker Hamdan Bilal, who was then detained by Israel's military. The attack on Bilal came just weeks after he won an Academy Award for co-directing the documentary No Other Land, about violent Israeli settlers trying to seize his community in Masafer Yatta. On Friday, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences issued a statement apologizing for not initially supporting Bilal after he was beaten and detained. In Lebanon, an Israeli airstrike blew up a residential building in Beirut's southern suburbs on Friday. It was the first Israeli attack on Beirut since a truce was reached in November. Residents of the neighborhood decried the Israeli strikes.
This destruction, we got used to it. There's nothing new. This is their approach. Their approach is vandalism, destruction. Their approach is killing. They don't need a reason to hit us. They invented a reason to hit us now. This is normal, and all the world knows it. The old and young know it. Praise to be God.
Israel also attacked the town of Kafr Tibnit in southern Lebanon, killing at least 3 people and wounding 18, including women and children. The U.S. is continuing its bombing campaign targeting the Houthis in Yemen. Overnight, U.S. airstrikes hit areas of the capital, Sana'a. The U.S. also attacked Yemen early Saturday. Houthi officials say the U.S. strikes have killed at least 59 people since March 15th after Houthi fighters said they would resume Red Sea cargo attacks over Israel's renewed all-out war on Gaza. Residents in Yemen criticize the ongoing U.S. attacks.
The American-Israeli aggression has carried out several airstrikes on the outskirts of the city of Sada, resulting in the martyrdom and injury of some citizens. We want to tell the American enemy that this bombing will not deter us from supporting Gaza.
President Trump has told NBC News he won't rule out using military force to annex Greenland, to take it from Denmark. Trump's comment came a day after Vice President J.D. Vance visited Greenland as part of his delegation with his wife Usha Vance and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. On a scaled-back trip, they only visited a remote U.S. space base north of the Arctic Circle, the base about 1,000 miles north of Greenland's capital Nuuk. During the speech to U.S. troops, Vance repeatedly accused Denmark of neglecting Greenland.
The president said we have to have Greenland, and I think that we do have to be more serious about the security of Greenland. We can't just ignore this place. We can't just ignore the president's desires.
One Danish TV channel reported U.S. officials went door-to-door in Greenland looking for locals who would be willing to meet with Second Lady Usha Vance, but the U.S. officials couldn't find anyone interested. She was originally scheduled to go to Greenland's National Dog Sledding Championship, but under pressure, the U.S. dramatically scaled back the scope of the trip, which Greenland's prime minister criticized as, quote, highly aggressive. In the capital, Nuuk, residents criticized the U.S. vice president for coming to Greenland.
I don't want the U.S. to invade us. They can do their own business, military business in Thule, but they are not welcome here in Nuuk.
In immigration news, the Trump administration's asked the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn a lower judge's ruling that has blocked Trump from removing more immigrants from the United States after he invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The Justice Department filed an emergency appeal Friday claiming U.S. District Judge James Boasberg had unconstitutionally intruded on the president's national security powers by ordering the Trump administration to stop sending Venezuelan immigrants accused without evidence of being gang members to a supermax prison complex in El Salvador. Meanwhile, a number of immigration-related protests took place nationwide this weekend. In Florida, hundreds protested outside the Crome Detention Center, condemning what they described as inhumane conditions at the prison. 2 men have died at Crome over the past 2 months. Meanwhile, thousands of protesters marched in Dallas, Texas, against Trump's immigration policies. Hector Flores is president of the League of United Latin American Citizens, known as LULAC.
We Latinos are the backbone of this great state. We build the buildings, we paint the murals, we cook the meals from every culture in every corner of this country. We are the architects, the artisans, the chefs, the caregivers, the teachers, the scientists. Look around you. Look at these wonderful multitude that are here. We all do the different work that has to be done in this country that makes America great.
The news site Zeteo is reporting the Trump administration's begun secretly revoking immigration statuses of international university students without the knowledge of the students or their universities. Most of the students have reportedly been from the Middle East and Muslim-majority countries. The move by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, makes it possible for federal agents to then seize the students without warning. In related news, the Times of India reports the State Department's emailed hundreds of international students asking them to self-deport for allegedly participating in campus activism. This comes as legal battles continue over a number of students who have already been detained. On Saturday, protesters gathered outside a federal building in Minneapolis after ICE detained a graduate student at U. That's the University of Minnesota. On Friday, protesters also rallied outside a New Jersey courthouse where a hearing was held in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia graduate student protest leader who was detained 3 weeks ago and sent to Louisiana. Amy Torres is the head of the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice.
Yes, this is about Palestine, and also this is not about Palestine. This is about this administration taking the issue that they believe is the least sympathetic and making an example out of the people that they arrest so that they can dehumanize the issue, they can dehumanize the actors, they can dehumanize the people standing up as a means of going after every single one of us.
In related news, the interim president of Columbia University, Katrina Armstrong, resigned Friday, just a week after the school capitulated to a number of demands by the Trump administration, which had threatened to pull $400 million in federal funding from the school. Columbia's Board of Trustees then elevated its own board co-chair, Claire Shipman, in a highly unusual move to become the school's new interim president. On Saturday, a group of Columbia alumni ripped up their diplomas to protest the detention of Mahmoud Khalil and what they see as the school's complicity with the Trump administration. Another major law firm has agreed to cut a deal with President Trump. The firm Skadden Arps has agreed to provide more than $100 million in pro bono work for initiatives backed by the Trump administration in an effort to avoid being sanctioned by the White House. Meanwhile, another firm, Perkins Coie, has opted to challenge Trump's sanctions, but the Financial Times reports other large firms are refusing to sign a brief supporting Perkins Coie amid concerns they'll face retaliation by President Trump. On Saturday, demonstrators gathered at over 200 Tesla dealerships and facilities nationwide in a protest over Tesla CEO, Trump advisor Elon Musk's role in what they described as an illegal coup. Hundreds protested outside a Tesla dealership in Brooklyn, New York.
Well, I don't really care about Musk. What I care about is the rule of law and the people, getting to see their government working the way it's supposed to. And it's not supposed to be run by an unelected billionaire who callously tears apart scientific research, putting cancer survivors at risk, putting federal trials that are going to learn cures. Everybody gets sick. Who are these people who think we don't need science?
A day after the mass protests, Elon Musk traveled to Green Bay, Wisconsin, ahead of Tuesday's state Supreme Court election. Musk has spent around $20 million to support the Trump-backed judicial candidate Brad Schimmel over liberal Susan Crawford in what's become the most expensive judicial election in U.S. history. On Friday, Wisconsin's Attorney General sued Musk for offering to give $1 million checks to two voters who signed one of his petitions. On Sunday, Musk went ahead with his giveaway.
Let me first hand out two $1 million checks in appreciation.
We'll have more on Elon Musk and the Wisconsin judicial race and beyond after headlines. President Trump has admitted to NBC that he's considering ways he could serve a third term as president despite a constitutional ban preventing him from doing so. Trump said, quote, "There are methods which you could do it," unquote. He went on to say, "I'm not joking," unquote. The 22nd Amendment of the U.S. Constitution states, quote, "No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice." In health news, the top vaccine regulator at the Food and Drug Administration, Dr. Peter Marks, has resigned after being forced out by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. In his resignation letter, Marks wrote, quote, "It's become clear truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies," unquote. Meanwhile, HHS has hired David Geyer, a longtime vaccine skeptic, to head a federal study of immunizations and their relationship with autism. In addition, ProPublica is reporting the Centers for Disease Control ordered staff last week not to release a report on measles that stressed the need for vaccinations. This all comes amidst a measles outbreak that has infected over 520 people, including over 400 in Texas, almost entirely among unvaccinated individuals. In news from Sudan, the Sudanese military has taken control of a major market in Omdurman, the twin city of the capital, Khartoum. This brings the military closer to regaining full control of the entire capital area. On Sunday, the military's rivals, the Rapid Support Forces, confirmed it had pulled troops out of Khartoum, but the RSF threatened to return. And a French court today has barred far-right anti-immigrant leader Marine Le Pen from running for office for 5 years, blocking her from the 2027 presidential race. The ruling, which could upend French politics, came after a court found her guilty of embezzling European Union funds to help finance her far-right National Rally Party. Le Pen was also sentenced to 4 years in prison. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.